objections on GMOs. So again, we are going to organize a joint debate over the three objections. And then we are going to start with Tilly Metz as a rapporteur.
Thank you, Mr. President, Pascal Coffin. Yes, we are talking now about objection on placing on the market the following genetically modified crops. It's GM maize, GM soybean, and 5 stacked GM maize, and 14 of its sub-combinations. I won't go in all the details, but let me just point out 3 arguments why we formulate this objection. First of all, the risk to consumer health, lack of democracy in the decision-making process, and the question of what the Commission takes into account in its decision-making process. So first of all, risk to consumer health. What we have here is crops that is so genetically injured so that they are tolerant to more than one herbicide. And this modification allows herbicide to be used to treat weeds throughout the cultivation of the crops without killing the crop itself. But then we have an overuse of these herbicides, mostly glyphosate, on crops, and has led to a development of herbicide-resistant weeds. And then the response of the biotech companies is that to increase the number of herbicides. So you see, we're really in a vicious circle there. And this heavy dependence on chemical input has implications for the environment, for the biodiversity, for the health of consumers. I'm speaking here of the import of food and feed. We know that the herbicides to which GM crops have been made to be tolerant is glyphosate and glufosinate. Glufosinate is no longer allowed to be used in Europe and is toxic for reproduction. And we know all the question related to the cause of cancer by glyphosate. However, the GMO panel at EFSA does not really assess the residues from spraying with complementary herbicides, their combined toxicities, because we really have a cocktail here of herbicides, and also the interaction with a genetically modified plant and this herbicide. So we need this safety test really to go into the detail and not only analyzing the genetically modified plant. And then talking about the 5 stacked GM maize, this is plant produce insecticide chemicals known as Bt toxin, and this may affect the immune system. But there are no tests that are carried out by the EFSA to identify the unintended effects of Bt toxins. So that's the first conclusion. We cannot allow this genetically modified crops if we don't know all the risk for human and animal health and for the environment. Second argument, we have really a lack of democracy in the decision-making process. I just tell the new MEPs that are maybe here that in the last legislative period, we had 36 objections that were formulated by the European Parliament, and they had also no qualified majority in the member state. But nevertheless, the Commission authorized them. So this is a systematic lack of democracy. So really my question is to the Commission, why does it continue to authorize GMOs despite the lack of support from both member states and the European Parliament, which are the people who represent the citizens? So on the other side, my third argument is the crucial question. So what counts in the decision-making process? What are really the legitimate factors of the Commission if the European Parliament and the member state does not count? And what about the EU obligation under the Paris Climate Agreement, the UN Sustainable Development Goals, or the UN Convention on Biological Diversity? These are international agreements that the European Union has signed up to. don't they have any weight? So what has the Commission to say about this? And in the case of the soya bean, let me remember that this soya bean is one of the key drivers of deforestation. And so this soya bean should not be authorized unless it doesn't contribute to the deforestation, and we have then the proofs to be there. And then this echoes also the Parliament adopted a report last year on forest, and these are also the priority that recently the Commission said in a recently adopted communication about stepping up EU action to protect and restore the world forest. So I hope, dear colleagues, that you can support these objections, but I also look forward to get your point of views. Many thanks.
Thank you. So I'm going to give the floor to the...
Hvala, zdaj pa politične skupine, najprej ELS. Izvolite. Hvala. Slišala sem, da so v prejšnjem mandatu poslanci vlagali veliko ugovorov in mislim, da bo nažalost tudi tokrat tako. EFSA je vsem tem proizvodom dala pozitivno mnenje in niso nakazali, da bi ti proizvodi lahko bili bolj škodljivi od konvencionalnih alternativ. In komisija je to sprejela. Mislim, da je tako tudi prav. Če EFSA pravi, da je proizvod varen, potem moramo zaupati temu znanstvenemu nasvetu. To so pravila, ki smo jih sprejeli in to pač komisija tudi počne. Zato niso prekoračili svojega mandata. Zato spodbujam kolegice in kolege v odboru, da glasujejo proti tem ugovorom. Hvala. Hvala, socialisti, gospod Sil. Hvala.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, these three resolutions on the approval of these genetically modified products are supported by some groups, but in the past, we have tried to send out a strong signal in our Parliament. Obviously, we don't want any GMO plants and foods to be accepted in Europe because there is a threat to human health and that of animals as well. So the question is, what is the Commission's position on our majority resolutions? What's the position of the new Commission to respect the majority in this Parliament? I think that's going to be one of the most decisive questions to avoid this type of discussion cropping up again in the future in this committee. Thank you.
Thank you. So for Renew, Mr. Stefanuta.
Chairman, this is not and should not be an ideological debate about supporting GMOs or not. Any of these debates should be about looking at the specifics, and this is what I've done. And following that, I signed 2 of the 3 objections that were raised today for very particular reasons, but for specific reasons. I find that these GMOs are modified to resist high dosages of old and harmful pesticides, one of which is banned for use in the EU, and the other one which is deemed to have carcinogenic properties. So in my reading, we would have allowed, through the back door, an increase in the chemical treadmill of pesticides on our territory by going forward with this process. Furthermore, there is a rise of pesticide-resistant weeds, which will only have the effect of locking farmers even further into the chemical treadmill I spoke about, impending innovation in the field of next generation or low-risk pesticides. Overall, our group, supports innovation, is very much in favor of having a wise scientific approach, but this is not the case of innovation, because the placing on the market of these GMOs for 10 years is by no means a step forward in promoting innovation or ensuring the high level of human health protection stated in the Article 168 of the treaty. Hence, I join the colleagues from different groups in signing these objections. And maybe just a last word, an institutional question. We find ourselves, as you said, in the last legislative period with tens and tens of these objections. I wonder if we can work more on the legal basis so that we are not always faced with implementing decisions, but maybe go more towards delegated acts. I do believe this is a place where the Parliament needs to make its political point, and it's the only one, it's the only way in which we can make it. I would like to have the discussion perhaps with the Secretariat or with the Commission to clear me whether we shouldn't go more in the direction of delegated rather than implementing acts. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, as you know, ENVI asked the Commission to withdraw the current legislation and to propose a new one. So now the ball will be in the camps on the new Commission. So we will see what happened. For ID, we don't have any speaker. Yeah, please.
Merci, Monsieur le Président, mes chers collègues.
Thank you, Chairman. Colleagues. Well, 60,000 tons of Brazilian soya was landed in France a few days ago, but I'm delighted that the Commission now is allowing us to discuss the question of soya imports into the European Union. The European Union is the second soya importer after China. And GMO soya particularly comes from Brazil, but it's paradoxical. European member states ban the GMO crops of soya on their soil, but some other member states massively import GMO soya. According to Greenpeace France, France in particular, doesn't need to import products from the far end of the world. And Macron said that he wanted to re-establish Europe's protein sovereignty. I think we have to reduce the volume of production and of soya and replace it with other protein crops, such as peas, for example, or lucerne. And we would encourage the Commission not to push ahead with these trade agreements which undermine our own health in Europe. Thank you.
For ECR, please.
Thank you, Chair. We oppose all of these objections. The Commission hasn't exceeded its implementing powers, and the draft measures are entirely consistent with the legal processes specified in the Basic Act. The EU risk assessment process for GM crops and foods is one of the strictest in the world. It provides member states and the public with many opportunities for input, and it's robust enough to ensure that approved GMO products are as safe as conventionally grown products. GMO regulation must be underpinned by science, and products passing the EU's independent safety assessment should have fair market access. If we continually question the objectivity of this science, we risk undermining the legitimacy of our entire regulatory system. In the last parliamentary term, this committee adopted oral questions and a resolution on the subject of vaccine hesitancy and the problems this phenomenon creates. But how can we criticise those who do not vaccinate their children using scientific evidence while simultaneously ignoring the conclusions of institutions such as EFSA that GMO crops are perfectly safe? We also dispute the assertions laid out in these objections about the use of glufosinate and glyphosate. These GMO authorizations have no bearing on the reauthorization of glyphosate, and it is totally disingenuous to make this link. We have maximum residue levels, MRLs, in place for pesticide residues in all food imports, and GMO imports are no different. So we reject assertions about excessive use of glyphosate and the risk posed by maize and soybean allergens. EFSA's GMO panel in all three cases didn't identify any safety concerns for human consumption with regard to potential toxicity and allergenicity. As a more general point, it's important to note that while the use of GMOs for food use is limited, EU-wide dependency on GMO protein crops for use in animal feed is very significant, as a previous speaker said. It's therefore essential that authorizations proceed as rapidly as possible to keep pace with elsewhere in the world and to avoid disruption in the international trade of agricultural and horticultural commodities.
Thank you. For the GUE, Ms. Azekamp.
Thank you. The Amazon is burning more visibly than ever, and the outrage over the deforestation of these invaluable ecosystems is growing worldwide. And yet, the Commission authorizes more genetically modified maize and soy varieties. And the painful irony of this should be obvious for everybody. The rainforest and Cerrado are being cleared to feed the enormous hunger of the EU's livestock industry. The maize and soy that is grown on the recently cleared forest grounds over there are used to produce sheep meat and dairy over here. And these are precisely those varieties that we are objecting to today. The Commission knows that these maize and soy varieties have been genetically engineered to be resistant to glyphosate and glufosinate, herbicides which are essential enablers of the slash and burn type of agriculture, which is responsible for the fires in the Amazon. The Commission knows that we need to save the forest and reduce our meat consumption in order to curb global warming and halt biodiversity loss. The Commission knows that glufosinate, which has been banned for the use in the EU because it is reprotoxic, is endangering the population in the exporting countries and is entering our markets and our plates. The Commission knows there is no democratic legitimacy in the authorizations of these GMOs. At least they should know. So why don't you just stop these irresponsible authorizations? Thank you.
Thank you. So now we're going to give the floor to the Commission for a maximum of 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very pleased to be in the new formation of this committee, even if also for me it is, again, to speak about resolution against the Commission intentions. But nevertheless, I'm very pleased to explain the position of the Commission and in what sense we are implementing the legislation and protecting human health, animal health and the environment. So we are speaking here about 2 authorization of GM maize and 1 renewal of soy, which is already on the market. To summarize very quickly, EFSA performed a very comprehensive risk assessment and complied with the rules in the regulation and with the EFSA risk assessment guidance. And no data lack or whatever has been identified. Very, very importantly, member states do comment on EFSA's work, and EFSA has looked at all the comments and responded to them, and it is available on the EFSA website. There is full transparency on the member states' potential criticisms or questioning of certain scientific issues. The member states' comments and the response of EFSA are part of the EFSA opinion. Importantly also, regarding the pesticides, the authorization we are talking about are exclusively about imports. The cultivation takes place in third countries and the herbicides or the pesticides are sprayed in third countries. Very importantly, when the products are imported into the EU, whether they are GMOs or whether they are conventional products, they must comply with the maximum residue levels. And the maximum residue levels are set out in the pesticide legislation, which is also applicable to these products. So the protection of human health is guaranteed by the respect of the maximum residue levels. On the public perception, there are also possibilities for the public to comment on the EFSA opinion. And in this case as well, EFSA has responded in a transparent manner to all the comments made by the public. EFSA has concluded very clearly on the safety of the product. for human health, for animal health, and for the environment. In light with this, we have submitted the proposals to the committees of member states, which have to vote on these decisions. And primarily for political reasons, the member states did not take a position. They were not against nor in favor. This was in the standing committee and then in the appeal committee. So in the light of this, there is a legal obligation for the Commission under the GMO legislation to take a decision. Because the EFSA opinions are positive for human health, animal health, and the environment, it is the duty of the Commission to adopt the decisions, the authorizations. Now, regarding the comitology and the democracy, which has been highlighted by some of the speakers, of course, the Commission would like to introduce more democracy, and there is a proposal which is being discussed at the moment. And until this proposal is in place, there is no other way than applying and complying with the existing rules, particularly, again, as the EFSA opinions are positive. The plant protection product, I explained, the MRLs have to be respected. Now, regarding the dependency on feed imported from third countries, it is very high, and it is correct that we are working to decrease the dependency. But in the meantime, it is there, and our agriculture, our feed sector needs this soybean. So we have no other, I mean, the market is there to ask for these products. If the market would not ask for them, even if we would authorize them, they would not be imported because nobody would buy for them. So I would conclude that in terms of the authorization procedures, we have followed all the steps in a transparent manner in full compliance with the legislation. Regarding the dependency on imports and regarding the issues of the UN Convention and other international agreements, of course these are issues and the Commission is implementing them in the relevant conventions, but they're not directly linked to the individual authorizations we are talking about today. So I hope I have answered the questions. I thank you again for giving us the floor, and I hope we can continue a constructive debate in the future. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
So thank you very much. We're going to close this second debate for the morning. So we meet at 2:30 this afternoon